The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Sunday, May the 3rd, 2026. And welcome to This Week with Mary Holland and myself, Polly Tommy. Mary, you're back. You're back hot off the plane.
I am. I'm so happy to be home, but Brian Hooker and I had an amazing time in Italy, France, Belgium, and Switzerland. We met some just incredible advocates and physicians and scientists and parents, and we talked about vax, unvax. We talked about autism. We talked about the massive epidemic of vaccine injury. We talked about the work of CHD. And truly, it was just a really heartwarming, really wonderful trip.
I'm so pleased you're back and well done for going out there and doing that. It's the same situation in Europe as it is here.
Pretty much. That's the point that I made, Polly, is that we are all subject to these global health policies now, not only during COVID, but the childhood program. And it's slightly different in Europe, but it's basically the same program. And so it's very important that we know what was happening in one another's place. There's a lot of interest in what's happening with Secretary Kennedy, what's happening in the US. And I found it very interesting, very helpful to find out what's going for them there. There's certain ways that they're ahead of us. There's certain ways that we're ahead of them, but we're all in this together. That's real. And fortunately, Polly, we had CHD Europe. It's no longer intact as CHD Europe, but there are really phenomenal people that we've been working with for many years. And it was really, really great to see them.
So vaccine injuries and deaths are real here and they're real there.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right, let's get on with our first piece, Confessions of a White House Public Health Priestess. This is Katie Talento, and she says, I kept Robert F. Kennedy Jr. out of the West Wing. Now I owe him an apology. It was my job to recommend when it came to public health, which bills to write, which bills to move, which bills to kill, which issues to conduct oversight on, and which agencies to subpoena. Each mum told the same story of a vaccine and regression of children into autism. And it goes on to tell her story about the CDC, her job to make it all go away, and how she watched Vaxxed as well, which I thought was interesting. But Mary, what do you know about this?
What I know, Polly, is she published this on her Substack. She had it embargoed. It was published by the Maha Report, as well as we did an article about it in Defender. What I like about it, Polly, is that she is somebody who's coming forward and saying, I made a mistake. I didn't know better. I was a Harvard-trained epidemiologist. I believed what the doctors told me. I believed what I learned in medical school. And now I know that it was all wrong, and I've left the cult. I think what's a little bit more troubling, Polly, is did we get the full story here? I think she feels guilty for what she did, and she's asking for atonement for it. And I want more people to come forward, and I want us to be receptive to it. And I think she didn't tell us everything that we would have wanted to know. That's what I've learned so far.
So far, yeah, I'm sure there's more to come on this.
I'm sure.
Michael Navadakis in The Defender. Trump's new pick for Surgeon General opposed COVID vaccine mandates, especially for kids. So President Donald Trump withdrew the nomination of Dr. Casey Means to serve as US Surgeon General, and he tapped Dr. Nicole B. Safia, a radiologist who previously questioned COVID-19 vaccines and mask mandates, as his new nominee. The president blamed Senator Bill Cassidy for sinking Means' nomination and said Means will continue to fight for Maha. So what do we make of all this? Lots of people getting very stressed by this new pick.
I'm not stressed by it, Polly. So I think that Casey Means was not politically feasible. Trump blames Senator Cassidy, whatever. Her nomination was stalled for a year. I do think it's valuable to have somebody in that job. It's somebody who can communicate about health to the American people. I think that Dr. Safir is quite confirmable. She was a spokesperson on Fox News for medicine. She worked at a major hospital as a radiologist for breast cancer patients in particular. What I like in reading this article, Polly, is that in 2021, she published a book about everything that was wrong with the COVID measures. And Jeffrey Tucker is reading the book. I haven't read her book, but we have a comment from him that it's really a pretty brave book for 2021 from a mainstream doctor. So I'm encouraged, and I'm glad that somebody will be in that job, because I think it's a valuable job.
FDA knew of better method to detect sudden deaths after COVID vaccines, but refused to use it. New documents obtained by Senator Ron Johnson reveal that Biden-era federal health officials refused to use a state-of-the-art statistical tool for detecting COVID-19 vaccination signals in VAERS, even though they knew the tool they were using was broken and failed to pick up on safety signals, including sudden cardiac death. And as I said, we did cover this extensively on CHD TV this week, but
Well, we should have. It's appalling what happened at the FDA. So there was a researcher, Anna Schwarzman, who was telling them we're not catching all the signals of things like death and cardiac arrest, and they shut her down. And so Ron Johnson's put out this 600-page report. He had a hearing on it last week. I'm so proud that our scientist, Kalia Lanowski, spoke there. He spoke eloquently. This is outrageous. As Senator Johnson points out, this was intentional. They knew they weren't collecting safety signals, and they didn't change. And it was intentional not to collect the safety signals in a betrayal of the American public.
it's outrageous.
It is. It's outrageous.
Which is the line I stole from Senator Ron Johnson. We had an exclusive interview from Claire Dooley afterwards with him, and it's now on our Instagram, and you'll find it also in the show notes here as well. We'll put it in there for you, but you've got to watch, if nothing else, just Ron Johnson's exit interview is very good. Jill Erzan here says Senator Ron Johnson email showed FDA ignored overwhelming evidence of harm from COVID vaccines. So Senator Ron Johnson said the roughly 600 pages of internal health agency emails show federal officials deliberately relied on flawed system to monitor COVID-19 vaccine safety. He said regulators ignored warnings from the FDA researcher, while witnesses said critical signals were missed. The US lacked a fully functional early warning system at the time of its greatest needs. David Weissman, PhD, also testified. But that's a really good article if you want to get more on what Mary was just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we covered it well, and it is appalling. There's nothing more to say. Really, there's nothing more to say.
Well, Suzanne Burdick in the Defender, Children's Health Defense senior scientist, says CDC and FDA COVID vaccine safety monitoring is insulting and many people are injured. Federal health officials under the Biden administration abysmally failed at monitoring COVID-19 vaccine safety signals after the vaccine rollout. According to congressional testimony delivered by Children's Health Defense senior scientist Karl Jablowski, the government's vaccine safety monitoring has been insulting and many are injured. So that was him in his written testimony. He was on Friday morning, CHD TV, to talk us through what it was like being there. And it's just an excellent interview. We were all so proud of him being there, Mary.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to say about it. It sort of gets into the weeds about this empirical Bayesian analysis. But the bottom line is that people like Peter Marks, who's now working for Eli Lilly for millions of dollars, shut these people down. They didn't want information to come out. It's just shocking. They really didn't care about people's lives. They cared about the vaccine and what people said about them. There's nothing more to say. It's great that Ron Johnson is really trying to get the truth. This is in their own words.
I know. Thank God for Ron Johnson.
Thank God for Ron Johnson.
Okay, Brownson Institute here. BBC interview is the latest example of how media continues to ignore COVID vaccine safety signal. In a recent BBC Radio 4 interview, Victoria Male, PhD, told listeners that a study revealing evidence of mRNA COVID-19 vaccine safety concerns shouldn't be cited because the authors of the paper had been specifically told to make it clear this paper should not be used to support certain safety claims. One of the authors of the peer-reviewed paper, Dr. Joseph Freeman, said that the statement was untrue, but the BBC never fact-checked the claim. Well, not surprising from the BBC.
It's not surprising. It's a long article, but it's very interesting. The author, Dr. Freeman, as you said, is one of the authors of this scientific piece. And this mainstream reporter for BBC, Jamie Bartlett, just completely misconstrued the article. And what's funny is she does this show called Everything is Fake and Nobody Cares. And he says at the end, only half of that is true. Everything is fake, but people really do care. He's really upset about the way in which she completely butchered this article that he wrote. He's butchering also a program where Dr. Asim Malhotra spoke. The bottom line is the COVID shots were a disaster, and they're trying to continue to make it sound as if they weren't the disaster that they were.
That is the bottom line. Michael Nevadakis, virologist at Center of Coronavirus Research, loses NIH grants and university places him on leave. Virologist Ralph Baric, PhD, who collaborated with Dr. Anthony Fauci and researchers at China's Wuhan Institute of Virology during the COVID-19 pandemic, has lost his NIH grants and been placed on leave by the University of North Carolina. Baric is considered a pioneer of gain-of-function research, which evidence suggests may have created the SARS-CoV-2 and the COVID-19 pandemic.
So it's great news that Ralph Baric is no longer being funded by the taxpayers, but as Robert Redfield, who used to be the head of the CDC, says, it's very possible that the SARS-CoV-2 virus started from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And Jeffrey Sachs, who ran a review for The Lancet, said that's the likely origin. And part of the reason that they're not being more direct about this, as reporter Paul Thacker says, is they're very worried about the liability, right? If the University of North Carolina can be identified as the place at which the SARS-CoV-2 virus was, the gain-of-function virus was doctored and created, they're out of business. The other thing that's interesting about this article, Polly, is they note that apparently Senator Rand Paul has tweeted that there is the possibility to bring federal charges for perjury against Anthony Fauci by May 11. I don't quite understand what that statute of limitations is, but I think all eyes on May 11, there might be an indictment of Fauci.
Michael Nevadakis, profound abuse of trust. Former Fauci aide indicted for conspiracy to hide government records on COVID origins. This is Dr. David Morenz, who served at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, known as NIAID, Office of the Director between 2006 and 2022. He faces 5 charges, including conspiracy, destruction of records, and federal investigations and concealment of records. Dr. Anthony Fauci led the NIAID until his departure in December 2022.
This is great news. As Jeffrey Tucker says, there's a huge closet of skeletons. This is just a small bone, but it's very clear that Morenz lied and committed a federal crime. There are 2 unindicted co-conspirators in this. One of them seems to be Peter Daszak. Another one is somebody that Dr. Ebright at Rutgers has identified. All 3 of them should be convicted unless one of them flips and gives more information about Fauci and others and then gets some kind of clemency. David Morenz is 78. He could spend the rest of his life in prison if he was found guilty on each of these charges. So he has a big incentive to come forward and talk about what really happened. Dr. Ebright at Rutgers, who's been a great critic of all this gain-of-function stuff, says that without accountability, the recklessness and lies will continue. This is the first prosecution, so I hope there'll be more.
Federal government appeals ruling in AAP lawsuit that struck down Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s vaccine policies. HHS will likely file the formal appeal with the first U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in the coming days. Legal experts told the defender, according to the Washington Post, this is all according to them, the March 16th federal court ruled that blocked changes U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made to the childhood immunization schedule and a key vaccine advisory committee will remain in effect while the appeal is pending.
It's good news, Polly. The Department of Justice was slow to file the notice of appeal for Health and Human Services for Secretary Kennedy. I'm glad they filed it. I'm looking forward to reading their response. Let's see what the appeal is. That lower court judgment should be overturned. It's a bad decision.
Okay, Jill Erzin here. Autism Committee hears from non-speakers and parents during first meeting under Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee held its first meeting since Robert F. Kennedy Jr. took over at HHS. The meeting, which brought together 20 public members and federal representatives from more than 20 agencies, ended with the committee voting in favour of 4 recommendations, including adoption of the term profound autism.
So it's exciting, Polly, that this is a good committee and they met, and many of our friends are on that committee, and there are 2 non-speakers with autism on the committee. It's a whole different phenomenon than what we ever saw in the past, where it was just a really terrible committee. I was really excited to see they talked about autism as a whole body phenomenon. It is not a psychiatric disorder as it's currently considered. They talked about how people with autism often have their other serious medical conditions like gastrointestinal issues and others ignored because they have autism somehow. Caden Larson, son of Jennifer Larson, who's been a major factor in autism activism over the years, said that learning to spell, doing letterboarding, changed everything for him. Aaron Siri, Tracy Slepchevich spoke to the committee. They also addressed elopement. They addressed safety wandering and elopement. So finally, Polly, we have an autism committee at the federal government that's talking about what's really happening. They're not talking about ridiculous genetic research that went nowhere for 20 years. So I was excited by this. And I know we showed it on CHD TV, which is terrific.
Okay, Gates-funded Big Catch-Up delivers 100 million vaccine doses, including the high-risk DTP vaccine not used in the US. This is the World Health Organization, it's UNICEF, and it's Gavi. The Vaccine Alliance, and backed by the Gates Foundation, said that they vaccinated more than 18 million African and Asian children in 36 countries. During a Senate hearing last week, US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. defended his decision to withhold funding from Gavi, citing its use of a version of the DTP vaccine that is associated with a high rate of serious injuries. Mary, why do they keep attacking African and Asian children?
Well, the real reason, Polly, is they want to lower the number of children in those places. I mean, that's really, there is a depopulation agenda for Asia and Africa by the United States and other developed countries. But the real issue here is that the whole cell diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine has been out of use in the United States since the early 1990s. One of our Supreme Court cases, Brucewitz versus Wyeth, was out about the design defect of the DTP vaccine. And Japan had gotten rid of it at least a decade before the United States. These vaccines are really reactogenic, and kids can be profoundly injured. And so this is just outrageous. It's just outrageous to be giving these vaccines that we no longer give in the developed world to children in the developing world is just wrong. It's got to stop, Polly. So kudos to Secretary Kennedy for not giving money for this. I couldn't agree more.
Paul Offit tried to write an anti-vax playbook. It backfired. Longtime vaccine advocate Dr. Paul Offit offered up 3 simple rules for how to be an effective anti-vaccine activist. But according to Children's Health Defense senior research scientist Karl Jablowski, Offit may as well have been describing the pro-vaccine playbook. Jablowski dissected Offit's 3 rules one by one on Good Morning CHD, which he did do, and that video is there for anyone to watch it. But it was a great article that they wrote, so thank you for that.
Yeah, it is great. I mean, Paul Offit, hanging up. Really, he's just talking about the Vax Pro playbook. He's just, he's not talking about us. He's talking about what they do.
Yeah, but I like that Children's Health Defense are coming back and addressing.
We're pushing back. I agree. It's very important.
Very important. World Health Organization on X. Now, it's not just the World Health Organization. I just want to put everything up here for you now. But literally, Gavi, everything, all those organizations we've just been talking about are actually trying to, actually, it's just they're lying, barefaced lying to your face. This is the headline: Give your baby the gift of health. Hashtag Hep B vaccine, known as HBV vaccine, their first dose on their first day to protect them for life. Ensure babies get at least 3 of the HBV vaccine doses to protect against liver cancer in adulthood. I don't think there's anything on that page that is true. There's anything on that.
Holly, but it defies any logic. Why would you need something in the first 24 hours of life to protect against liver cancer as an adult? It's ridiculous. It's just blatantly ridiculous. And it's a picture of an African American woman or an African woman with a baby. I mean, it's so exploitative. It's wrong. It's just wrong.
Unbelievable. X is just overrun with these organizations putting out lies like that. Well, I have asked Dr. Suzanne Humphries to take a look at all of these. Brenda Belletti in The Defender: RSV vaccine for pregnant women linked to preeclampsia and other complications. A new post-authorization safety analysis of Pfizer's Abrasivo, I can't say that, RSV vaccine found that women who received the vaccine were 29% more likely to experience hypertensive disorders, including preeclampsia. The Pfizer-funded researchers cautioned that their findings are not conclusive. Of course they do. They're funded by Pfizer.
You know, the most interesting thing to me, Polly, in this article was that 97% of RSV deaths occur in middle and low income countries. In other words, this is just like the Gardasil vaccine. It basically is an issue. It is an issue. RSV is an issue in the developing world, but where they now try to push it on everybody is in the developed world. It's a total mismatch. It's ridiculous. And it's incredibly dangerous and terrible. They already have, with these RSV vaccines, more preterm births and more Guillain-Barré. It's just crazy.
Most of our viewers are going to like this article. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says mandatory ultra-processed food labels are coming. So an HHS spokesperson confirmed that after hundreds of meetings with scientists and stakeholders at multiple federal agencies, a definition of ultra-processed foods is almost ready. Last week, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. told Congress that mandatory front of packaging labeling will be required once the definition is finalized. I'm so pleased.
I think it's exciting, Polly. It's shocking to think that 60% of American children's food, their diet, is ultra-processed food. That's just shocking. And basically, as Dr. Michelle Pirro is quoted here saying, it's what does that really mean? I mean, it means that this is stuff that's built on depleted soil and from monocultures. What we really, it's GMO stuff. What we really need is local whole food. And absolutely, it will make a difference in people's health. There's no question.
Okay, Suzanne Burdick here. Will justice side with pesticide giant or cancer victim? Scotia's Waste landmark liability case says the US Supreme Court heard arguments in a case that will determine if pesticide companies can be held liable for health harms caused by their products if the EPA doesn't require these health warnings on product labels. A man who alleges that Roundup weed killer causes cancer brought the case against Bayer. Lower court awarded the man $1.25 million. Bayer is seeking to have the ruling overturned.
Man, apparently, according to the questions in oral argument, it wasn't clear how they're going to rule. The Department of Justice sided with Bayer in this case. That puts a thumb on the scales. But this article is very interesting that there's a precedent that was cited by the Durnell lawyer against Monsanto and Bayer that was unanimous in 2005, that it is possible for the EPA to have misbranded something and you could still hold them accountable. So we will have to watch that case really closely. It also relates to the Farm Bill, Polly, and the Farm Bill is going to the Senate. And it also deals with this issue of a liability shield. So, every big corporation wants to have complete ability to do whatever they want and never be sued. And we can't let that happen.
We've covered a story like this before, but here we go again. She refused a smart meter for health reasons, so New Jersey Water Company shut off her water. After more than a year of threats, New Jersey American Water sent a technician accompanied by 2 police officers to shut off a woman's water because she wouldn't allow the company to install a smart water meter due to health concerns. New Jersey has no regulation requirements requiring residents to accept smart meters. That is horrific.
This woman, kudos to her. So what she did, they turned off her water. She had chronic fatigue syndrome. She knew that the EMF was going to hurt her. She called the State Board of Public Utilities, who confirmed that there is absolutely no law that requires her to have a meter. And that got the company to come back and fix it. But she was 6 days without running water. She had to go to a hotel, and she's considering suing them. And I hope she does. I think she can prevail. What they did was illegal, and they used the police to do something that was absolutely they had no right to do whatsoever. So kudos to her for making an issue out of this.
Okay, now let's talk about our movie, Duty to Disobey. The 30th of June is the worldwide premiere. But if we don't get our tickets in the next 2 weeks, we've got till May the 15th. That's the tipping deadline. We need to tip those theaters for us to be secure in that. So you've got to go to dutytodisobeyfilms.com and get your tickets today. If the film doesn't tip, you'll get your money back. But we do need to tip these theaters. I know that Boston has tipped already. So Boston, well done. You are in the lead with tipping your theatre straight away. So well done to you guys. So it's just to make sure your screening goes ahead. If your screening does not sell, then that it will not go ahead. Literally. So 50% of the tickets in the theatre need to be sold by the May the 15th for us to secure those theatres for our big worldwide premiere. So I know there's lots of action going on social media, and well done to all of you. I see so many of you going live on your Instagrams and social media, asking people, to buy tickets in your area. It's going to be a great event, and very important that we support the military, because again, as we say this every week, what happens in the military tends to then come up to us. So it's really important we support them. Plus the fact that it's such an education listening to these people of what happened to them during COVID. I thought I had it tough, but no, the military had it really tough.
And I've watched an earlier version, Polly. These are really extraordinary people. These are really inspiring people. They're really, these are not run-of-the-mill people.
Yeah, and I just want to say this. I mean, obviously you'll see it when you see the film, but Mary and I covered this a lot when we were doing the show throughout COVID. But you got to remember that the military were mandated the COVID vaccine for an authorized vaccine called Comirnaty. Remember that story? That Comirnaty never set foot on American soil. So they were lied to when they went and got their shots. And this is why it's called duty to disobey, because it's an unlawful order that was given to the military with the COVID-19 vaccine. So it's really powerful, isn't it, Mary?
It is. It's very powerful. It's a great film.
Okay, everybody. Well, so that's it. I will be with you tomorrow on CHD TV live, and I'm going to be with Kim Mac Rosenberg, and we're going to be talking. We're going to talk about a lot of legal stuff, but we're also going to be going through that first article we did with the lady that wants to apologise to.
Oh, good.
So that's going to be live tomorrow. So we've got a people study story as well for you. So we'll see you tomorrow. But for Mary and I, pray big, stand firm, and never settle. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
The devil's in the details, right? The stratospheric aerosol transport and nucleation, Satan.
That's actually what they call it.
Right. That's the acronym, Satan.
That's written in MIT.
They aren't even hiding it anymore.
They have denied things over the years. Oh, we don't have that science or that thing. And then 5 years later or 3 years later, dang, they're putting it in a press release that they really do have it.
The White House released a congressionally mandated report, and they're focusing on reducing or eliminating natural sunlight from reaching the Earth.
Geoengineering carries with it a tremendous range of uncertainties, ethical and political concerns, and the potential for catastrophic environmental side effects.
Reporting on this, like you guys are doing, it puts you in the crosshairs.
If you speak out about anything that is against the narrative,
you're in line to get your head cut off with the guillotine.
Scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. This is nuts.
There's different nanoparticles everywhere, not only in the food, but in the water. It hides in the tissues. It builds up inside the nervous system.
This is a conspiracy theory. It's not something that sort of normal, rational people think is happening.
It's not a theory. Would you care to look at my data?
There has been testimony in front of the United Nations. There's also been testimony in front of the U.S. Congress, and I'm talking 15 and 20 years ago.
They know where it's coming from. I mean, he's a biologist. This stuff does not belong free form in the atmosphere. It's nano material. That's man-made.
Whatever's up there is going to come down on us, right? It's going to land on our water, going to land on our food. If we're going to say our food is organic, what about our sky?
Did the colonizer ask for permission to take our land? What makes anybody think that geoengineering is going to be a different story? This time, they are colonizing the sky.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, everybody, welcome. And here we have the amazing Ariana Victor. How are you, Ariana? It's been some time since our viewers may remember you from the trucker convoy.
Right. I think that was back in 2022, if I remember correctly. And I can't believe that it's been 4 years' time since that. And even back during the trucker convoy, this film was existing as footage in my hard drive that I had begun to run around our country collecting interviews from experts and just all sorts of things. So the seed had been planted back in 2020, and it's amazing just to see how far it's come. And I can't believe that was already 4 years ago. So I'm doing great, Polly. It's good to see you.
Now, what an amazing trailer. Now, at the beginning of the trailer, I didn't catch, so something about Satan. What was that about?
So in MIT research, they published an article that was talking about the stratospheric aerosol transport and nucleation project that was being released in the UK. And the acronym for that is quite literally Satan. So, I mean, just the irony here, it's like a storybook. It's literally a movie and a screenplay. We have the Lord of Darkness, who is quite literally trying to block the sun. And Dr. Henry Ealy even makes a joke in the film. He's like, they could at least rearrange the acronym. Can we at least call it Santa? So it's just shocking.
Ariana, this looks such important work, and we're so grateful for you covering geoengineering for our viewers as well, because I know we are passionate about this. But here's the thing, and I want to get in a minute also of why you are even in it in the first place. But here's the thing, 9 times out of 10, when you speak to a family member or someone you know, they say this is BS.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this topic for so many decades, not just years, I'm talking about 3 decades. People have been pointing up at the lines in the sky since the 1990s. Late 1990s was when people really began to see it. And especially it continued into the early 2000s. People were asking questions about the lines in the sky and these aerosol trails. And there was not information that exists out there like it is today about large-scale geoengineering, plans like solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection. These are all technologies that are being implemented and released and proposed across governments worldwide to protect us from climate change, right? And so that's admitted today, but back in the 90s, we didn't have this information in publicly available or through our universities or academic institutions or even our own governments. So when people would ask questions about the lines in the sky, they were immediately just dismissed into what was the chemtrail conspiracy theory. So because that became one of our most, I would say, popular conspiracy theories, kind of straight up there with flat Earth in terms of how it's been discredited, that's why, it's been so ingrained into the public consciousness of this just being loony. And so I think that continues over today. More and more people, I think, are starting to recognize, oh my goodness, this is legitimate, this is real, this is being proposed across governments and academic institutions and scientific bodies. So it's becoming, the truth is getting out there, and people are starting to open their eyes and ask more questions now that this is being legitimized.
And Ariana, why are you doing this? Because you're young, beautiful lady, very talented editor and camera person. Why have you chosen this subject? Because I feel like, as you mentioned in that trailer, it is a dangerous thing to explore.
Right. My dad, who's actually on screen right there, would ask the same question of why are you touching this topic out of everything you could be making movies about? The truth is, Polly, I didn't want to touch this subject matter. I knew nothing about it. Back in 2017, my hometown was Santa Rosa, California, and that burned down in what was, I believe, the beginning of the anomalous, historical, record-breaking fires that have been hitting California ever since. So 2017, Santa Rosa Tubbs fire was the most destructive fire in California history. At the time, I was in film school, and I knew nothing about this topic. I could feel in my gut that something was off, something was weird, something wasn't natural about these fires, and a lot of people could perceive that, but didn't know what exactly to point their finger to. Was it arson? Something like that. Flash forward to 3 years later during the pandemic, and I'm witnessing the world crumble. My view of governments, my view of our scientific and academic institutions, my world was 180ing, at least my understanding of it, as I was kind of peeling back the layers of like truth versus fiction and sort of the government mandates and everything that was happening on the vaccine front. That was when, shortly after I started working for Children's Health Defense as a reporter, because I believe so strongly in the mission. But at the time, these topics weren't at the front of my consciousness or even awareness. And it was fire season again in October of 2020. And it reminded me of what had happened in 2017. So we were waiting on orders for a fire eviction, and something was happening where I was dehydrating myself. There was something in the water that I could sense that my body was maybe actively avoiding. I had remembered a video that I watched on YouTube back in the day of someone set up a time lapse of GMO seeds and non-GMO seeds, and they wanted to see what the birds did. The birds had actively avoided the GMO seeds, unconsciously, because they didn't know the difference, but there was something in the intelligence of these birds that without intellectually understanding that these are GMO seeds, they still were able to avoid them and completely ate all the non-GMO. And so in that moment, I remembered that video. And I asked the question, I said, there's something in this water that my body is actively avoiding that maybe I don't consciously understand yet. And no joke, it was like a vision from God. As soon as I asked that question, what is in this water? I saw the entire film lay out in front of my head, or in my head, I should say. And I knew in that moment that, oh my God, there's heavy metals in this water. It's aluminum, it's coming from the sky, it's getting in the water supply, it's getting in the soil, it's getting in the trees. And I saw the intensifying fires. And I saw myself traveling around the country asking questions. And again, I didn't know anything about this. And so the more that I began to research, I found, Geoengineering Watch with Dane Wigington. I found so many scientists and researchers who had been dismissed for so long. And that was when the fear kicked in for me, because I thought, hey, this is a very serious matter, and it has been blanketed as conspiracy theory. And, I wanted to turn away. And, I had Netflix dreams. I had Hollywood dreams. I went to one of the top film schools. The last thing I wanted to do was potentially destroy my career pursuing this topic. But every time I tried to walk away, more and more doors would open that kept pushing me in the direction of, this is your story to tell. And that's partly why I put myself in it, was because I recognized it was bigger than just geoengineering. It was about the courage it took to overcome that fear, to be a voice and to stand on the front lines and speaking up for what really matters in today's world. And geoengineering is, quite frankly, one of the most important topics because it does affect all of us. It affects planet Earth, and we're really at a critical point of awareness.
All right, we're live. Can you tell us your name, please?
My name is Pamela Redding.
And how many children do you
I
have?
have 2 little boys.
And how old are they?
Sean's 7 and Wyatt is 3.
All right. And so when you were pregnant with your first, did you have a conversation about vaccines at all?
Yes, my husband and I sat down, and we had a good friend that gave us paperwork about childhood vaccines and what were in them, and we reviewed it, and we were like, I think the protocol, they say it's safe, even though the stuff is in it. I think we'll still do it because everybody else is doing it, They've been doing it for years. we'll go ahead and vaccinate our children. We just kind of thought he was a kook and wrote him off. So we began, my pregnancy was fine. I had a little bit of stress because we were moving from California to my home state of South Carolina. And everything was fine. Birth was fine in the sense of not stressful, but we ended up having a C-section because the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. A couple hours after having him, my brother-in-law was holding him and he was holding his head up. And we were like, oh my gosh, he's such a strong kid. Look at him, he's gonna be a football player one day. We didn't think to know that that was stress on his autonomic nervous system. You know, he was totally stressed out, but we had no idea. We got the first round of childhood, vaccines as an infant. Everything was fine, no issues. Then around the age of 2, when he's supposed to be making these, milestones, he's not talking. And we're like, what's going on? He's not talking. So, sorry.
It's okay.
I asked the doctor, he's not talking, what do we need to do? And she said, don't worry about it. It's common. He started walking at 7 months. Either you're gonna walk really fast and you won't speak, or vice versa. You're gonna be speaking and you won't be walking as fast. Don't worry about it. Put him in daycare and he'll start talking. And I said, okay. So we put him in daycare and he started talking. So we were like, okay, everything's fine. Everything's great. He's talking, he's fine. A little bit delayed, but he was fine. So then it started with the clothes sensory issues. You'd put clothes on him and he'd freak out. And I was talking with my sister and she's like, Pamela, he's not doing that. I said, come and watch him. Come and watch him. So I'd put on an outfit that I knew he hated. Bam. He'd start freaking out. My sister's like, this is not normal. And I said, I know it's not normal. Something's not right. But we kept on because he was my first child. Didn't think anything of it. Then 3 hit. And all hell broke loose. He started throwing chairs at daycare. Acting like a raging bull. Would not listen. Wouldn't sit down. Climbing the walls. All over the place. Almost got kicked out of daycare because he ended up pulling down a girl by her hair and stomping on her head at age 3. So we were like, what in the world are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? COVID hit. And I said, oh my gosh, I guess we'll just take him out of daycare and we'll figure out something. Took him out of daycare. I got mixed up with the COVID stuff, reading the propaganda, believing it, and then it hit me. I know what they're doing. They're poisoning us. That's what they're poisoning us. That's what they're doing. So we started cleaning up our diets, cleaning up everything, changing our whole way of life. And but the behavior was still bad. And I brought him to the doctor, and the doctor said, he has ADHD. That's what he has. We're gonna put him on medication. And I said, are there any other options? Do you have any other options for me? And I basically was scoffed at. They used the whole analogy, well, what if your son was a diabetic and you didn't give him insulin? How would you feel about that? And I looked at her and I said, listen, if I don't give my son insulin, it's gonna kill him. If I don't give my son ADHD medicine, it's not gonna kill him. I said, my son has a deficiency in something, but it's not Adderall. And she looks at me and she goes, I think we're done here. And I said, you're right, we are done here. I got in the car and I cried and cried and cried because I felt so hopeless. And I said, I'm gonna figure this out. So I put my boys to bed at 9 o'clock. I got on the internet and started researching. And I went from peer-reviewed studies all the way down to mom Facebook groups. Guess where I found most of my information? The mom's Facebook groups. And so I started looking at that, and then I would go back into the journals to look to see, what are the moms saying, what's going on. And the one thing that kept on coming up was heavy metal toxicity. Heavy metal toxicity. Look at heavy metals. Look at heavy metals. So we went and we got the hair tissue mineral analysis. And we got it back, and my son was off the charts with aluminum. And we were like, where in the world is he getting aluminum from? So, bam, childhood vaccines. So we went down the list, and it was like antiperspirants, he doesn't wear that. Cooking with aluminum pots and pans, aluminum foil, we don't do that. The tap water, unfiltered tap water, and we were like, well, that's one. And then the childhood vaccines. So process of elimination brings you down to the 2. So my husband was sitting there like being devil's advocate, saying, well, okay, well, how do you know? How do you know that that's it? And I said, Eric, look at what's in the vaccines. Look at our son and put 2 and 2 together. It's just common sense. Everyone's telling you, oh, how do you know? How can you prove it? Da, da, da. What about the genetic component? And I said, well, what about a genetic component? They haven't found any, they can't tell you any genes that are changed that causes ADHD. So I said, I'm going to figure that out. So I started researching and found the MTHFR gene mutation and got our son tested, has it. It's where you hold on to stuff, you can't detox yourself properly. So we started detoxing the heavy metals, and behavior got better, but still wasn't completely on point. So then I have a friend that her son was vaccine injured too. He was having seizures, having major issues with that. And she came to me one day and said, listen, I found a chiropractor that totally said that he can help with neurological issues, seizures, ADHD, this and that and the other. We're going to go up and we're going to see him. So we're in South Carolina. They were going to go up to Chicago. And I said, in my head, I'm thinking, she has lost her mind. Total desperation, but I pumped her on, but I was like, I don't believe that this is going to help them. Long story short, they went and did the chiropractic work. They were followed up by a doctor here in town, Dr. Scott Elliott, and the seizures stopped. Basically, 1 month was seizure free, 2nd month seizure free, 3rd month my son became suicidal. They were saying seizure free, and I was like, I'm going to see this doctor. I'm going to go and see him. So I called
What do you mean
him.
by suicidal?
He was saying he wanted to kill himself at age, so this, mind you, this is up to age 6 now.
Yeah, but still, a 6-year-old saying they want to kill themselves.
We were in the pits of hell, truly. Because I'm like, and people are like, well, how does he know that? I don't know where he picked that up at, but he's telling me he wants to kill himself, and I don't know what the heck to do. So I was thinking, is this the chelation of the heavy metals that is doing this, or what is going on? So we went to see the doctor, the chiropractor, and he put all the pieces together. So basically what we have found out is that we did have a traumatic birth from the C-section, and the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. We then gave childhood vaccines, which has all the toxins in them, and it made his brain inflammation like crazy, which has in turn caused the ADHD symptoms and the neurological issues that he was having, just totally off the charts. So the vagus nerve was kinked, and then with chiropractic work, you unwind the spinal cord, so it allows his spine to, I don't know, his brain to fire properly. So after a year and a half, we have a totally different kid. He's not throwing chairs anymore. He can sit down. So in kindergarten, he wasn't able to read. He wasn't progressing, couldn't count. It was just at a standstill. And now he's reading, he's counting, he's sitting down and doing his homework, doing everything that a normal kid should be doing.
How careful do you have to be about diet?
She was asking me this earlier. With the diet, we're probably not as strict as we should be, because I still feel like he needs to have ice cream and that kind of stuff, but we're not eating McDonald's and Chick-fil-A all the time. Maybe once in a blue moon we'll have that. But we've cleaned up a lot. Truly, we're not the standard American diet family by any means. The chelation has kept us with just, keeping everything put, but not crazy, but not get a cheeseburger every day.
Fine.
So
you fixed it.
I fixed it. I'm fixing it. I mean, he's much better. There's still more to go with the. You can see with the aluminum here, he was off the charts in the beginning. That was his first one, and then 6 months later, we dropped him basically in half.
Nice.
And then a year later, he went up. And I said, ask the doctor, the functional doctor, why did he go up? He said, you're getting it all out. So the aluminum was being stored into his bones and in his brain and everything else. So when you get it out, you're getting it all completely out. So typically it's supposed to go, the first hair sample, or the second hair sample, it's supposed to go up because you're getting all the reserves out, but he dropped. And I truly believe that's just the grace of God, because I was doubting it, because we were still having all these behavioral issues and all of, just craziness. It was chaos in our house. Couldn't put him to bed, literally climbing the walls, screaming, hollering. It was just hell on wheels. But
well, thank you so much for telling the story.
Thanks for
giving
having
us
me.
your wisdom.
Yeah.